So the Las Vegas Raiders have officially begun the second week of OTAs, and today we're going to talk about a lot of new things that are kind of coming out. We're getting some players healthy, some players not so healthy, and we're also getting some insight into the starting cornerback position for the Raiders. We knew that Darien Porter was taking first team snaps. We now know who is officially on the other side of that. We're going to talk about all of that. Let's just get right into it. Easily the biggest news that came out, in my opinion, today is that the Las Vegas Raiders superstar pass rusher, Malcolm Koonce, is officially up and running at practice. The reports have been put out there. There's videos of this guy actually out there. If you guys not know this, Malcolm Koonce has not practiced. Right, today was literally the first time this guy got out there on the field and started to essentially run. And this is a great timeline that this guy is back on, and I'm pretty confident to say that Malcolm Koonce will most likely be 100% healthy come the first week of the NFL season, right? I don't think there'll be any setbacks. ACL injuries generally heal pretty well. And I also think guys are able to get to like 100% most of the time within like 12 to 18 months. And the fact that Malcolm Koonce tore his ACL very, very early on in the process, I'm pretty sure this guy's going to be very, very close to 100%. So Malcolm Koonce, first day back, is actually out there running. And I think this is very, very important, right? Because with Christian Wilkins as an example, Christian Wilkins has already kind of been out there multiple times, and his foot obviously has not healed right. There's reports he might have to get surgery. He might miss more time as we kind of go forward. And Christian Wilkins' timeline's kind of all over the place, right? We don't really know if this guy's going to be ready to go. With Koonce, this guy's on the perfect path, right? And I think Malcolm Koonce changes his defensive line so much more than people might realize. I think he's one of the elite pass rushers. I think he's one of those guys that is, he was at the point in his career where he was ready to like absolutely take off and truly become an elite pass rusher, right? And I think he'll eventually get back to that form, even with the Raiders this season. And I love the fact that this guy's actually out there. So he can obviously wrap up OTAs with the team, right? He'll be able to kind of get out there on the field. He'll run around. He'll kind of do some things. Before training camp, which is going to be like mid to late July, he'll obviously be able to continue to work. He'll be able to, get out there, hit the bag, and do those kind of things privately. But he'll be at the point where, like, in 2 months, he's going to have basically 2 months of on-field activities. He'll be good to go come training camp, right? Now, I don't know if the Raiders will put him out there 100%, right? He'll have to pass the physical at that point, right? And we don't really know how the ACL will obviously respond as he kind of gets out there on the field. But again, really, really, really positive sign. I'm excited to see what this guy can kind of do as we get into this season. If all three of our defensive linemen, right, and Koonce, Crosby, and Christian Wilkins are healthy, this defensive line should be very, very good. So we'll see what ends up happening as that time kind of comes around. Christian Wilkins is not practicing, right? So just to kind of put it out there, Christian Wilkins still has that foot injury. He's not out there practicing. We did add 2 more guys that are no longer practicing for the Raiders. Not 100% sure what's happened here. Adam Butler, undisclosed, and Jeremy Chin, undisclosed. Again, it's not a huge deal, right? Because this is still technically voluntary. You don't have to be there if you don't want to. So it could be as simple as these guys are like away, right? And they're visiting family or whatever it might be. But with that, so you get these 3 guys out. Christian Wilkins, the guy we already knew would not practice. We did get another guy back as well. Thayer Munford is also technically back at practice. He had not practiced up to this point, but he's officially out there. Now, with Darien Munford, it will be interesting if this guy can get out there and potentially push to earn his spot back, like that right tackle position. I know a lot of people don't actually think he'll ever get that position back, but it will be interesting to see where the Raiders line this guy up. Remember, we have Colton Miller, we have DJ Glaze. I think both of those guys are mostly looked at as offensive tackles. We have Charles Grant, who's another offensive tackle, right? That puts you at 3. I don't know how many more offensive tackles you're going to keep besides that, right? You'll probably keep 1 more. I think Dalton Wagner has a chance to make the roster. He's looked really, really, really good, at least like physically looking at him. And then we'll see if Thayer Munford can earn some sort of role with the Las Vegas Raiders as we kind of go forward, right? And there are like 3 other guys that we have, like UDFA, second-year guys. We'll see which guys can kind of make that push. There was a really interesting report that came out. Ryan McFadden, who is covering the Raiders for ESPN, actually put this out there. And it was a very, very, very interesting tweet when I saw it because, I knew Darien Porter was starting because that's something that I had reported last week. We had heard that this guy was taking first team snaps Maxx Crosby even spoke about it on his podcast, in which Darien Porter was impressing. And of course, he mentioned that the Raiders were putting this guy in position to go up against some of the Raiders' best wide receivers, right? But now we're hearing that it's Eric Stokes who's on the other side of Darien Porter, which is kind of interesting in its own right. Most people assume that it would be Jacorian Bennett who would get the first team snaps for the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, of course, this is not set in stone, right? Anybody can end up starting at any point. Any other player can end up winning the job out. We're still 3 or 4 months away from the actual final decision being made. But the fact that the Las Vegas Raiders feel like Eric Stokes and Darien Porter are the two guys that should be getting those snaps with the first team unit is kind of interesting to me, right? Because we had heard multiple times at this point, right? There's been multiple different things that have happened that have kind of hinted that the Las Vegas Raiders are obviously going to be switching schemes, right? They're apparently going to be going forward with like this Pete Carroll cover 3 type of look. And obviously it hasn't been confirmed that that's what the Raiders will be going with, but we've gotten so many different hints, right? Bringing in guys like Jeremy Chin, drafting Darien Porter, signing Eric Stokes. These guys are all like 6'2.5" plus, essentially, right? And with that, we all kind of have been, getting these hints that the Raiders are going to be switching to more of that cover 3 zone look. And with that, it kind of makes sense that Darien Porter and Eric Stokes are your 2 boundary corners, right? If you want guys that could play in that cover 3 system, zone heavy, right? You want guys that are bigger, that are taller, that are longer. And that kind of makes sense for the Raiders that they're going to go forward with those 2 guys. But I do wonder, what about Jacorian Bennett? What about the upside that we had seen on tape over the past 2 seasons, especially this past season, right? Jacorian Bennett looked really, really, really good for the Raiders. And, if I was a betting man, I would have said that Jacorian Bennett's going to be one of the Raiders starting corners. Now, I'm not sure if Jacorian Bennett is still getting first team reps. That's something I will find out today. But the thing that's interesting to me with the fact that these 2 guys are the first 2 guys that are kind of out there with the first team unit is that who's the guy that's going to play in that slot, right? Could it be that Jacorian Bennett jumps to the inside, right? I'm not 100% sure, right? I could even see a situation where the Raiders say, hey, we're going to put a guy like Isaiah Polamau in the slot or a guy like Jeremy Chin in the slot, right? And, in the cover 3 look, you essentially need 2 guys that can be down in the box with even your slot corner, right? Keeping in mind that we're going to be playing a lot of nickel defense. I wouldn't be surprised if the Raiders put both of those guys up there, right? But again, it's still, it still goes to ask, like, where's Jacorian Bennett going to essentially be lining up for the Raiders, right? Could he be jumping to the inside? One of the things we will find out over the next, not only over the course of OTAs, but even as, training camp comes around, is what scheme are the Raiders planning to run? And then where are guys actually going to be playing? Right, I'm pretty sure Darien Porter is never going to play in the slot. I'm pretty sure Eric Stokes will never play in the slot. But it would be interesting to see, could Jacorian Bennett potentially jump to the slot, right? At the same time, do the Raiders utilize a traditional slot corner, or do they go with that big nickel look where you put a safety at that corner position, right? The slot corner specifically. We'll find out. We'll see what ends up happening. But I did want to just kind of bring that up and talk to you guys about it. Eric Stokes, Darien Porter are 2 guys that will be getting the first team snaps, at least early on. Levi Edwards, who covers the Las Vegas Raiders. He's a digital reporter for the Raiders. He's at every single one of the practices. Said that the 2 rookies who have flashed the most today was Ashton Jeanty and Dante Thornton Jr., which with Ashton Jeanty, nothing ever surprises me, right? He's going to be a really, really good football player. But with Dante Thornton, not that it surprises me necessarily. Jacoby Myers and Chip Kelly also kind of spoke about Thornton. I'll show that to you guys here in a second. It's not that it surprises me, but when I look at Thornton, I look at a guy that's long, who's lengthy, but a guy that has to develop, right? It's a guy that, we don't really know what this guy is, right? There's that unknown factor, right? Mostly because of the fact that this guy, as a wide receiver at Tennessee, he didn't get to, go out there and run a full route tree, right, with Tennessee. He was kind of limited how they utilized him, right? But at the same time, the guy averaged 26 yards a catch, right? There's a good chance if he gets a catch, there's a good chance it's gone, right? It will be interesting to see how Dante Thornton kind of develops, but We also did have Jacoby Myers talk a little bit about him and Chip Kelly as well in their post-game press or in their after practice pressers. Jacoby Myers said of Dante Thornton, he said, Dante Thornton is not just a guy that can run fast. He's got some real receiver skills in his game. This one's interesting, right? Because if Jacoby Myers thinks Dante Thornton has real receiver skills in his game, I'm going to take what Jacoby Myers has to say. And I'm going to value that very, very highly, right? Jacoby Myers is one of the smartest wide receivers in the NFL. The guy's not like, 4.3 speed. He's not like 6'3", and he doesn't have this crazy athleticism to his tape. He's really good at a lot of things, but he's very, very smart, and it allows him to be like one of the best, 15 to 20 wide receivers in the NFL. And with Jacoby Myers saying that Dante Thornton isn't just fast, he has real receiver skills. I want to see how this translates as we kind of go forward, right? I want to see how that actually translates. I do think Jack Bech will end up being a really good wide receiver early on in his career. I think Ashton Jeanty will be really good early on in his career. With Dante Thornton, it's kind of up in the air, like we could hope he ends up being good, but like I want to actually see him do it out there. Right, with Trey Tucker, we saw so much flashes, so much upside, but it has not clicked. Right, I want to see if with Dante Thornton it could happen earlier than it happened with Trey Tucker. Right, and Trey Tucker hasn't really put it together. But even Chip Kelly spoke about Dante Thornton. He had some interesting things to say as well. He said, if you had to draw up an outside receiver, you will draw up that body type. This is interesting, and I wanted to talk to you guys about this statement specifically because if Chip Kelly is saying if you have to draw up an outside receiver, you would draw up that type of body, to me, that's basically telling us that Dante Thornton is going to be an outside wide receiver, right? Like, he's literally telling us that this is what this guy will essentially be, right? That type of body means we're going to develop this guy as an outside wide receiver because that's what we value as the guy on the outside. This also answers another question, which is where is Jack Bech going to play? Will Jack Bech be on the outside? Will he be on the inside? That was a question that a lot of people had, and I'm pretty sure Jack Bech will now be mostly lined up in the slot. One of the things that I know a lot of people do realize this, but if you don't know this, one of the things of how it works is, a coach will call a play, right? Like, hey, the X receiver is going to run this, Y receiver, Z receiver, a tight end. This is the route combination that we're going to run, or they'll say this is the play we're running. And these guys know that, okay, if we're running a dagger concept, one of us has to run deep and then one of us has to cut across the middle of the field. Depending on what you're tagged with, right? The X, the Y, the Z, where you have to go line up and what type of route you need to run, right? You might be a guy that's only there to kind of just run deep, right? Or you might be the guy that we're going to actually throw you the football. Depending on the type of role that you have within a team, and every wide receiver has a role, you're going to line up differently, different spots. You're going to do different things. And for Chip Kelly to tell us that Dante Thornton is the type of receiver you're going to put on the outside, that tells me that the Raiders plan to utilize him and develop him on the outside, right? Dante Thornton is going to be running a lot of deep routes. This guy will also be running a lot of cross the field type of routes, right? Like over routes, skating posts and those type of things. And it's also important to realize that the Raiders are going to be running a lot of outside zone, which means Dante Thornton on the outside is going to come downhill and crack block on those linebackers, on those safeties. So this is just telling me this is what the Raiders value this guy as. And then, of course, with Jack Bech, I think he naturally ends up on the inside because of it. I also do think that, Jack Bech is a lot closer to Jacoby Myers, and then Dante Thornton is a lot closer to Trey Tucker in terms of their roles. Now, you'll get some guys that are like play cross roles, right? Like Trey Tucker, for example, plays a lot on the outside, but a lot of his routes, they're not like routes where like they're running him across the middle of the field, right? They're routes where he's running deep, and then they design another route off of this guy going deep, right? Or he'll run a post route. I think Thornton will do a lot of that, but I also see Thornton having another added thing to his route tree, which would be he'll run across the middle of the field and take those hits, right? Same with Jack Bech. Jack Bech will line up on the outside. He might not go deep necessarily, but he'll run across the middle of the field, so him and Thornton will kind of cross a little bit on that, right? So I think the Raiders are going to be in a really, really good spot this year, man. I really do have faith in Chip Kelly. If you guys followed me last year, you guys know I hated Luke Getsy. I was really, really, really passionate about how bad I thought Wilkins was. And that was mostly because I did cover the Bears on the football, or I do cover the Bears on the Football Scout channel. And, I saw it for 2 years, right? I saw Wilkins just be a really, really poor coach. And with Chip Kelly, he's different, right? I don't think he's a poor coach. In fact, I think he's a really, really good coach. So I think the Raiders are going to find a lot of success on offense. And just kind of wrapping it up, speaking about the offense, Jacoby Myers did tell us some insight. He said that he feels like this Raiders offense is built around running the football and thinks if Ashton Jeanty can do what he thinks he can do in the NFL, it could be a fun year for the Raiders. He's been real impressed with what he's seen out of the rookie so far. So think about what Jacoby Myers is telling us right here, right? He's basically telling us that the Raiders are going to be a run-first football team. And that's an interesting statement, right? Because, I do think for Geno Smith to have the most success possible, the Raiders should be a run-first team, right? The way the Seahawks ran the ball so much under Pete Carroll. And I think for the Raiders to have success, that naturally just kind of makes sense. But I also do question, outside of Ashton Jeanty, who's that next running back? Like, who's RB2 for the Raiders? And then who's consistent? Who can make those plays? I understand why you bring in Raheem Mostert, right? He's the guy that could theoretically be an RB2 for the Raiders, but he is older. And then if he does end up getting hurt, which is something that could potentially happen, it's happened more recently with this guy over the past 3 or 4 years. He's missed time. Who's the next running back then? So do the Raiders have enough running backs to be a run-heavy team? And I understand we can just give Ashton Jeanty 35 touches a game, but I want Ashton Jeanty to be here for 8 years, right? I want him to be here for 10 years, not 4 good years and that's it, because you overfed this guy, right? You have to, limit the touches you give a guy like Ashton Jeanty, just running backs in general. But I do like the fact that the Raiders are going to take this run the ball approach, because even from an offensive line perspective, I do think the Raiders offensive line is designed to run the football, right? Coy Miller to me is one of the best run blocking offensive tackles. I think Jackson Powers-Johnson's one of the best overall, but I would say his run blocking is better than his pass blocking right now, right? Specifically because as fast and quick as he is, you don't generally get that with that type of size. So you have an elite left tackle that's a run blocker specifically, or elite run blocking left tackle, elite center when it comes to run blocking. And I'm not trying to overhype any of these guys. Even DJ Glaze is a much, much, much better run blocker than he is a pass blocker. DJ Glaze might be a top 10 right tackle when it comes to run blocking among the 32 guys. Pass blocker, he's probably bottom 10 right now based off his tape last year. But in terms of run blocking, DJ Glaze is really, really, really solid. So you got 3 of the 5 guys that we know that will most likely be starting as guys that I would say are good run blockers. I would argue even the other guys that you kind of have now, Alex Kappa, I don't have too much confidence in him. Dylan Parra, especially when it comes to run blocking. But if you could get, potentially the rookie Caleb Rogers to start in one of those positions, I have faith in him. Right, especially on wide zone, outside zone type concepts where he has to reach and cut people off. I have a lot of confidence in him in that instance. So if the Raiders are running the football and 4 or 5 offensive linemen are good run blockers, you should be able to have success. Pair that up with Chip Kelly calling those plays, designing those plays. Right, there's not going to be any confusion. Every guy is going to know which player they need to block on every single play. When you have Dante Thornton crack blocking, when you have Jacoby Myers and Jack Bech and Brock Bowers blocking, the Raiders are a massive, massive offense. In terms of the receivers are big, right? They're strong, they're tall, they're physical. If the Raiders do go to this physical brand of offense, they can have a lot of success. I really do think that. And I do think there's a chance we're going to be running over some teams. If not this year, we might run over 1 or 2 teams. But within the next 2 or 3 years, the Raiders are going to be a power-based football team. And we're going to be running people over. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to be physical. And I'm excited for it, man. I do think the Raiders they're on the best track they've been over the past 15 years right now, right? Everything we've done over the past 2 seasons, where we're at right now, we've done everything smart, right? We're no longer reaching for the Tyrees over the Carters, right? We're taking the best players. We're getting better. And that's the best way to build championship teams. Let me know what you guys think, man. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe if you did. And I'll see you guys next time with another video.